We are willing to lay down our blood on this soil. So try to come, and we will kill every single soldier, bi'idhnillah. We will chop off the heads of the Americans, chop off the heads of the French, chop off the heads of whoever you may bring.
America and the world did not hide the collective shock when the phony Islamic State, calling itself ISIS, beheaded its first victim and then proceeded to take great relish in doing it more often for the world to see. But the truth is, there should have been no great shock, because this is something Islamic-based revenge has been conducting for generations, and one can only guess where it might lead next. Let's welcome to Midpoint consultant, researcher, and author on the topics of Islam, jihadism, and other Islamic sects. During the Reagan years, he was a linguist in the 101st Airborne, and now his expertise comes to us, Timothy Furnish. Timothy, thanks so much for joining us today.
Glad to be here.
Fair to say, though, what I said is true. When it comes down to the beheading of infidels, as they call them, this is something that has been going on for eons, if you will, in certain areas of the country and connected with the Islamic faith, correct?
Oh, very much so. As you probably know, I wrote a 2005 article on this topic in the News Quarterly, Beheading in the Name of Islam, and I traced not just the Quranic roots, but the approvals of it by Islamic scholars, and according to Islamic biographers, Muhammad himself ordered beheadings of opponents.
But let me go ahead and play devil's advocate here to some folks. For instance, the American Muslim Association, they have repeatedly condemned the act. They have said that any attack by foreign elements are a direct affront to Muslims, but they have also condemned actually beheading itself. Where do we separate it then into what makes the sect and what drives some of these people in order to take what has been something that went on centuries ago and bring it forward into the 21st century?
Well, it's because of this at least millennium-old understanding in Islamic thought by Islamic scholars and theologians that the only, particularly the Sunni ones, which is the majority, that the only acceptable way to read the Quran is literally, and then it applies across, as we used to say in the academy, across space and time. So therefore, you can't, when it talks about beheading in both passages of the Quran where it does so, when biographers talk about Muhammad ordering beheadings of opponents, it can't be simply, as we do with many things in Judaism and Christianity, say, well, that only applied several thousand years ago, or that's only allegorical or symbolic. Those interpretations are not allowed. And any Muslim groups that condemn this as un-Islamic are either frankly ignorant or disingenuous, because it's clearly Islamic. It's brutal, but it's 7th century literal understanding of Islamic texts and of Islamic history.
Timothy, though, let's dig into that a little bit. Why do we always get here? Because you're bringing up a great point. We are always, and we've had it happen many times on this show, we have had one side that will come in and say the Quran is a peaceful document, that Islam is a religion of peace, that this is not what the religion is about. On the other side, we get the ones who will come in here and say, absolutely, that's what it is. It is violent. It is more than an eye for an eye. It is to go out and kill if you do not believe in our religion. How are we supposed to put the two of them together when we're constantly getting both sides telling us that their side is correct, and they back it up then with readings from the Quran?
Right. Well, a couple of things. One is that there's a doctrine in Islam. It's very complex. I'll try to boil it down quickly. It's called nasq, or abrogation. And again, it's an Islamic doctrine, not something dreamed up by Western scholars or Western politicians, where the violent passages of the Quran, which were believed to have been revealed to Muhammad later in life, outrank the earlier ones. So, and many Muslim scholars know this, and frankly, I think a lot of them appear in the media simply are duplicitous about this. According to the correct interpretation of Islam by the majority of Sunni scholars over the years, violent passages in the Quran outrank more peaceful passages which appear earlier in time, they believe. So that's one thing. It is true, however, that, and I take issue with some of the folks on my side of the political aisle on this one, I do believe there are moderate and more peaceful Muslims. They are minorities. They are sects in the Islamic world. They interpret the Quran other than literally. They are minorities, but they do exist. That viewpoint that they have, however, though, is a clear minority view. And when groups like ISIS or Boko Haram or Al-Qaeda say we behead, we kill, we do these sorts of things, following the Quran literally, as I said, from the 7th century, they are on very firm exegetical ground.
So how much of the Quran, then, is man-made interpretation? Let's go there. Because perhaps if you look at all religious documents, there are those who will tell you that man is the one who interprets it, man is the one who adds his or her own views to it and own opinions to it. So if you look at the way that Muslims read the Quran today, can we say that over the generations it has been made more violent or more radical, if you will, simply by people who wanted it to be that way?
No, I think it's the opposite. I think that the trend has been, and thankfully so, in the modern world in particular, for Muslims to say, some well-meaning, although I said I think some are duplicitous about this, but there are well-meaning Muslims that say that the Quran does not mean, basically, or that Muslims don't have to adhere to the violent passages in the Quran. But the fact is that the original rendering of the Quran, if you look at from the 7th century, when it was first put together, up through certainly the first 500, 600, 700 years of Islamic history, the primary meaning of it, according to the Islamic commentators again, is that the violent passages, the beheadings, the crucifixions, in other realms, things like allowing 4 wives and allowing the allowance for feeding those 4 wives when they misbehave, those literal understandings of the Quran were the ones that were primarily believed and enforced. And it has started to change in modern times, but again, according to a literal reading, which many Sunnis still adhere to, even ones not in terrorist groups, according to a literal reading, it's very violent and very misogynistic.
Is it fair to say that if these terrorists follow the Quran to the letter, we're seeing the beheadings, we were shocked by them in the first place, that it is possible that these are people who will bring even worse transgressions to the fore? And perhaps there is more where beheadings will simply become an everyday occurrence, and we may be really shocked by what may come down the pike.
Exactly. In the latest issue of their Dabiq magazine, and I've studied all 4 of them, much of the magazine deals with the justification for enslaving the Yazidi women. And under Islamic law, copious citations are brought forward from the Quran, from the Hadiths, from Muhammad's own lifetime, to say we are allowed to enslave these women because they're not Muslim and they don't fall under the second-class citizenship of Jews and Christians. Therefore, we can do whatever we want with them. And they have said that they will do this to anyone in any territory that they can conquer. They will impose this kind of Islamic law.
Timothy, I only got a couple of seconds left here. Do you go with some people who say that at its core, the Quran is evil?
I would amend that to say that when it is interpreted literally, it's very violent, especially toward non-Muslims. And the hope is that going forward, these sects that I mentioned that do interpret the Quran non-literally can become the majority. But I think that's a matter of decades, if not centuries.
Timothy Furnish, very nice to have you on the show. Excellent comments as well. We'll be in touch again. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Stay with us because Midpoint continues.
The first Dallas nurse to contract Ebola will be moved to the National Institutes of Health in Maryland. Hi, everyone. I'm Olga Villaverdi, and this story tops your Newsmax Now update. The Maryland Health Center has one of only 4 biocontainment units in the United States. The nurse, Nina Pham, contracted the virus after caring for victim Thomas Duncan. Meanwhile, Congress demands answers from CDC officials. Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn says she may call for the CDC director, Dr. Tom Frieden, to step down if she does not get good answers here. In other news, Arkansas State Supreme Court blocks voter ID laws. The justices say the laws requiring voters to show valid ID violate the state's constitution. And finally, Hurricane Gonzalo heads toward Bermuda. The Category 4 storm is expected to hit the island tomorrow. Right now, Gonzalo is packing sustained winds of 140 miles per hour. The storm has already killed 1 person in Antigua. And that's your Newsmax Now update. More coming your way in 30 minutes. I'm Olga Villaverdi. We hope to see you then.